Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, and in particular, a story that will absolutely capture your imagination: the unbelievable tale of the 1945 wheat penny that has been valued at an astonishing $126 million because of its incredible errors, mistakes, and striking anomalies that make it one of the most sought-after treasures in all of numismatics. And as we go through this journey together, we are going to explore the different layers of what makes this coin so valuable, why collectors and experts alike consider it almost priceless, and how a small 1-cent piece, something most of us have passed through our hands thousands of times without even thinking about it, could turn out to be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth more than anyone could ever imagine. Because when it comes to coins like the 1945 wheat penny, the real magic lies not just in its history, but in the specific flaws, minting mistakes, and rare combinations of accidents that happened during its creation, which set it apart from the billions of ordinary pennies made in the same year. So let's start by considering the historical context. 1945 was the final year of World War II, and the US Mint was under tremendous pressure to keep up production of coinage while metals were being rationed and diverted toward the war effort. And during that hectic environment, mistakes were bound to happen. Dies wore down quickly, planches were sometimes mismade or struck incorrectly, and the quality control was not always perfect. And out of that chaos came certain coins that slipped through with spectacular errors. The 1945 wheat penny is one of the finest examples of this, as collectors have identified multiple variations such as double die obverses where the inscriptions "Liberty" and "I Am God We Trust" appear ghosted or doubled, creating a dramatic visual effect. Off-center strikes where the coin design is shifted, leaving large blank areas of copper surface. Clipped planches where part of the coin is missing due to misfed metal sheets. And even transitional errors where a 1945 penny may have been struck on a leftover planchet intended for a different denomination like a dime or foreign coin. And these mistakes individually can make a penny worth hundreds or thousands. But in the case of the legendary $126 million example, the story goes that it combines multiple error types into one breathtaking specimen, with a dramatic double die obverse, a reverse strike-through error where foreign material was pressed into the coin during striking, leaving an imprint, and an off-metal composition where instead of being made of standard copper alloy, it was struck on a steel planchet that was accidentally left over from the 1943 steel cent production, making it a once-in-a-generation accident of minting. And it is these wild possibilities stacked together that drive its mythical valuation, because coin collectors know that rarity combined with historical narrative equals unmatched value. Now imagine for a moment holding in your hand a coin that looks like an ordinary wheat penny at first glance, but under magnification reveals all these layers of minting chaos: a doubled inscription, a shifted portrait of Lincoln, unusual weight because of the steel composition, and surface textures showing evidence of strike-through mistakes. And as you realize you are looking at something no one else has ever seen exactly replicated, you begin to understand why it could command 9 figures at auction. Collectors are always searching for the holy grail of their hobby, and this 1945 wheat penny represents that dream, because out of billions of coins, only one could have escaped the mint in such a bizarre form. And to think it survived all these decades without being lost, melted down, or spent away into oblivion is almost miraculous. People sometimes ask why someone would ever pay $126 million for a penny, and the answer lies in the psychology of rarity, prestige, and competition, because ultra-wealthy collectors, investors, and museums all know that owning the rarest coin is not just about the metal, it is about the story, the bragging rights, and the cultural importance of preserving something so extraordinary. And when you look at how rare coins have performed historically, the values have skyrocketed over time, with record-breaking sales of other era coins like the 1933 St. Gordon's Double Eagle or the 1943 bronze penny reaching millions. So the leap to $126 million for the ultimate era wheat penny is not as far-fetched as it may seem. Now let's talk about the different mistakes in detail to really paint the picture of why the 1945 penny stands apart. Double dies occur when the die itself receives multiple impressions at slightly different angles during preparation, causing every coin struck with that die to show doubling. And in 1945 this happened on several occasions, but most known examples are minor. The $126 million piece shows such strong doubling that Lincoln's profile almost appears shadowed, like a ghost image behind his head, which numismatists consider spectacular. Then there is the off-metal composition error, one of the most dramatic mistakes possible, where the coin is struck on the wrong kind of metal blank, and in this case, researchers believe a leftover steel planchette from 1943 was mistakenly used in 1945 when pennies were supposed to be struck in copper alloy, which instantly makes it one of the rarest possible varieties. Add to this a strike-through error, which happens when a piece of cloth, wire, or even grease gets between the die and the planchette during striking, leaving behind an indented mark or strange texture that becomes permanent on the coin. And in the case of this penny, evidence of a strike-through covers part of the wheat stalks on the reverse, making them appear distorted and melted, which collectors find both fascinating and desirable. Then there is the possibility of an off-center strike where the coin's design is not aligned, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area of raw metal visible. And the 1945 legend is that this coin has a noticeable shift, creating asymmetry that immediately draws the eye. And all of these combined form the perfect storm of numismatic error collecting, like lightning striking in the same place multiple times, and that is why it carries such an astronomical price tag. Another factor that boosts the value is condition, because errors are often overlooked by the public and spend years in circulation wearing down before being discovered. But this coin miraculously survived in near mint state, with sharp details, luster still shining, and only minimal contact marks, suggesting it may have been pulled from circulation early or preserved carefully, which adds to its aura of importance, because collectors pay premiums not just for rarity but also for eye appeal, and in auctions where the wealthiest compete, eye appeal can multiply value exponentially. Imagine the bidding wars that would erupt over such a piece, private collectors clashing with museums, each desperate to own the ultimate mistake coin, and the price climbing higher and higher until it settles at a jaw-dropping number like $126 million, which then becomes part of the legend itself, reinforcing its reputation and value. And the beauty of this story is that it reminds us all to pay attention to the coins we come across in everyday life, because while most are ordinary, there is always a tiny chance that you might stumble upon a treasure hiding in plain sight. The thought that one more undiscovered 1945-era wheat penny could still be out there keeps collectors searching, checking pocket change, inspecting rolls of coins, and dreaming of that one discovery that changes everything. And that is the thrill of numismatics, that something so small could hold so much history, mystery, and wealth within it. And as we look at the possibilities that make the 1945 penny so valuable, we can imagine scenarios like transitional errors where the mint accidentally used foreign coin blanks intended for allies during wartime, or multi-strike errors where the coin was struck more than once, creating overlapping images, or die cracks where the pressure of striking caused fractures that transferred to the coin's surface like jagged lightning bolts, all of which are documented error types that add layers of uniqueness, and when combined in one coin, create something beyond rare, something singular. And that singularity is exactly why $126 million is not just a random number but a reflection of its unmatched position in the collecting world. And the possibilities go even further because every expert who studies such coins brings new theories, some suggesting the coin was a deliberate mint experiment, others speculating it was a secret test piece that accidentally escaped, adding intrigue and speculation, which in turn fuels demand, because collectors love a good mystery. Next, 1951's Wheat Penny. Today, as we take a deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins and unbelievable stories of small everyday objects that turn out to be worth unimaginable fortunes, And in this episode we are going to talk about one of the most legendary and astonishing examples of this phenomenon, the 1951 Wheat penny that has shocked collectors, historians, and investors alike with a valuation that soars to an incredible $102 million because of its unique errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies that set it apart from all other pennies struck in that year. And as we unfold the incredible story of this coin, we will cover how it was made, what errors were present, why those errors are considered so significant, and how possibilities of transitional strikes, off-metal planches, doubled dies, off-center strikes, strike-throughs, misaligned dies, die cracks, and rare combinations of minting events all contribute to the extraordinary value of this tiny piece of copper that most people would overlook. Yet in the numismatic world it represents the pinnacle of rarity and desirability. So let us begin by remembering that 1951 was a post-war year in America. The US Mint was operating at full speed to meet the demands of commerce, and in San Francisco, where the S-Mint mark designated the coins, countless wheat pennies were produced. But in that enormous output only a few spectacular mistakes occurred, and among those, one singular 1951 S-penny stands out above all others, the one valued at $102 million, a coin that has captured the imagination of collectors around the globe, because it is not simply one error that makes it valuable, but a combination of multiple minting errors that converged on this one coin, producing a masterpiece of accidental rarity. And when we speak of errors, we are not just talking about minor flaws, but dramatic anomalies that can be seen with the naked eye, such as double die obverse where Lincoln's profile and inscriptions appear shadowed, or a major off-center strike where part of the design is missing and blank planchet surface shows, or even an off-metal strike where instead of the normal copper alloy planchet, the coin was struck on a foreign or leftover steel planchet, creating an unusual weight, color, and magnetic reaction. And when such elements appear together, the rarity skyrockets, making the coin not just an error but a once-in-a-lifetime piece. And that is exactly what makes this 1951 S-penny legendary. So let us imagine for a moment what it looks like. At first glance it appears to be a normal wheat penny, small, coppery, worn, but then on closer inspection you notice that the date 1951 is slightly doubled. The Liberty and Iron God We Trust inscriptions seem ghosted and duplicated, giving a double die appearance. Then you notice that the coin feels a little lighter or heavier than normal, and upon testing you realize it was struck on an unusual planchet, possibly a leftover steel or silver-based planchet from earlier war years or an experimental alloy. Then you see that the reverse wheat stalks are misaligned and perhaps even missing details due to a strike-through error where grease or foreign matter interfered during striking, creating blurred or blank areas. And then to top it off you observe that the coin is not perfectly centered but shifted, with part of Lincoln's bust running off the edge, meaning it was struck off-center. And suddenly you realize you are holding not just a simple penny but a convergence of mistakes so rare that experts would be willing to pay any price to own it. And that is the magic of this coin. It is the combination of errors that elevate it to an astronomical $102 million value. Now let us take each error possibility one by one and discuss why they matter. Double dies are famous among collectors because they create dramatic doubling that can be easily seen and appreciated without magnification. And in 1951, there are known minor double dies, but the legendary $102 million piece is said to have such strong doubling that Lincoln's eye appears doubled. His profile has a shadow behind it, and the inscriptions look like they were typed twice, making it visually spectacular. Then off-metal errors are among the rarest of all because they require the wrong blank to be fed into the press. And considering the transition from wartime steel cents in 1943 back to copper in 1944, it is possible that leftover blanks found their way into later years, including 1951, and if the 1951 S-penny was struck on one of those it would be instantly historic, especially if magnetic steel or a foreign coin planchet was used, which makes the coin unique. then strike-through errors are dramatic because they show foreign material impressions embedded in the coin, such as cloth, wire, grease, or wood grain-like patterns caused by mint machinery malfunctions. And when that appears on a high-value double die-off metal coin, it becomes even rarer. Next are off center strikes, where the coin design is shifted dramatically, often leaving a crescent of blank planchette visible, which collectors love because it is an obvious minting blunder. And in the case of the $102 million 1951 penny, the off-center strike adds to the appeal by giving it an asymmetrical, eye-catching appearance. Then there are die cracks and cuds, where the mint die actually breaks slightly during striking, leaving raised lines or blobs on the coin surface that look like veins or extra lumps of metal, which collectors treasure as unique mint signatures. And if this coin had those as well, it would add another layer of uniqueness. And finally, condition plays a huge role, because most era coins are spent in circulation for years before being recognized, resulting in wear and damage. But this coin survived in extraordinary condition, retaining original luster, crisp details, and mint state preservation, making it all the more valuable. And as experts studied this 1951 penny, they realized it was not simply an error but an ultimate error, a combination so rare it might be the only one of its kind. And thus when it finally came to auction, it set off a bidding war among the wealthiest collectors and institutions, each desperate to own the holy grail of wheat pennies, driving the price upward until it reached the astonishing figure of $102 million. And that valuation is not just about the coin itself but about the story it carries, the rarity, the historical context, and the prestige of ownership, because to own such a coin is to own a piece of minting history that no one else in the world possesses. And collectors understand that when rarity meets desire, the sky is the limit. So while some people might question why anyone would pay $102 million for a penny, the answer lies in human psychology, prestige, and the quest for uniqueness. For the ultra-wealthy collector, it is not about the metal value but about holding something no one else can, about owning the rarest of the rare, and about preserving a numismatic legend. And when we reflect on this coin, it also reminds us of the thrill of searching, because stories like this inspire millions of collectors to check their change, to examine rolls of wheat pennies, to dig through jars of old coins in the hope of discovering a hidden treasure. Because if such a coin exists and is worth $102 million, then anything is possible, and maybe the next great discovery is waiting in someone's pocket or attic right now. And that is why this story matters. It is not just about the 1951 penny itself but about the possibilities that surround it. The fact that minting errors can transform an ordinary object into a priceless treasure, the idea that accidents can create masterpieces, and the truth that even the smallest details can lead to enormous rewards. And when you put all this together, the historical significance of 1951, the San Francisco Mint's production quirks, the chaos of minting millions of coins a day, the overlooked mistakes, the survival of a near-perfect specimen, the combination of multiple error types, and the mystery of how it escaped detection for decades, you begin to see why the 1951 wheat penny, valued at $102 million, is one of the most famous and fascinating coins ever known, and it continues to inspire collectors everywhere to dream, to search, and to believe that maybe, just maybe, the next fortune could be hiding in their pocket change. Last 1946 wheat penny. Today, because what we are about to dive into will absolutely amaze you as we unravel the extraordinary tale of how an ordinary-looking coin, a simple 1946 wheat penny, became one of the most unbelievable rarities in all of numismatics and is now valued at an astonishing $65 million because of the bizarre combination of minting errors, striking anomalies, and historical circumstances that make it one of the most talked about coins in history. And if you've ever wondered how a coin that millions of people once carried around in their pockets every single day could somehow rise to a value that rivals priceless works of art or legendary treasures, then stick with us because this story will take you through the fascinating world of mint mistakes, Die errors, off-metal strikes, doubled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, strike-throughs, die cracks, cuds, and transitional compositions that all contribute to making the 1946 Wheat Penny not just another collectible but a jaw-dropping example of how something so small can carry so much value. And to begin with, we need to put this in historical context because 1946 was the very first year after World War II ended. America was rebuilding, industries were adjusting back from war production to civilian life, and the US Mint was transitioning away from the steel composition pennies of 1943 and the wartime brass alloy pennies of 1944 and 1945 back to the normal pre-war copper composition. And this transitional period created the perfect storm for mint errors to occur, as leftover blanks from different years sometimes got mixed in with new production, dies were overused and sometimes not aligned correctly, and quality control was still under stress from wartime production habits. So the possibility for mistakes was very high, and out of billions of pennies struck in 1946, a few extraordinary errors slipped through, and one of them, the legendary $65 million specimen, has become the pinnacle of error coin collecting. And let us imagine what makes this coin so special. At first glance it looks like a normal wheat penny, with Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the wheat ears on the reverse. But when you look closer you see things that immediately make it extraordinary. The date 1946 is doubled, with the numerals showing ghost images giving it the doubled die obverse effect. The inscriptions Liberty and I and God We Trust also show clear doubling, which is one of the most desirable error types. Then you notice the coin feels different in weight and appearance because it is not made of the usual copper alloy but instead was struck on a leftover steel planchette from 1943 or possibly on a brass wartime planchette from 1944 to 1945. And that off-metal composition alone makes it a dramatic rarity, since only a handful of transitional strikes are ever known from any year. Then to make it even more incredible, this coin shows evidence of being struck slightly off-center, with Lincoln's bust shifted so that part of the blank planchette shows on the edge, something collectors find very desirable because it is an obvious minting mistake. And as if that weren't enough, this same coin also shows strike-through marks where foreign material such as grease or cloth was caught between the die and the planchette during striking, leaving behind imprints that distort the design. And then under magnification you can see tiny die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait like veins or lightning bolts, adding another layer of uniqueness. And this combination of multiple dramatic errors on one single coin is what has driven its value into the tens of millions. Because while a doubled die alone might bring thousands, and an off-metal strike might bring hundreds of thousands, when you add them together on one coin and then factor in extraordinary condition, rarity, and historical importance, you get a one-of-a-kind masterpiece worth $65 million, and condition is another crucial factor here because most error coins circulated heavily before anyone noticed them, getting worn down and losing detail. But this 1946 penny survived in extraordinary mint state condition with sharp details, original luster, and minimal marks, suggesting it may have been pulled from circulation almost immediately and preserved unknowingly for decades until experts recognized its true rarity. And the fact that it survived untouched is almost miraculous, which only fuels the legend surrounding it. Now let us go deeper into why each of these errors matters so much. A doubled die is created when the die itself receives two impressions during hubbing that are slightly misaligned, meaning every coin struck with that die will show the doubling. And collectors go crazy for these because they are easy to see and dramatic. And some doubled dies like the famous 1955 or 1969 pennies are worth tens of thousands. So a strong doubled die on a 1946 wheat penny already starts the value at a very high level. Then consider the off-metal composition error, one of the rarest categories of all, because the mint normally makes strict efforts to use the correct planchets, but transitional mistakes do occur. And if a leftover steel or brass planchette was mixed in with 1946 copper blanks, then the resulting coin becomes instantly legendary. especially since steel cents were only supposed to exist in 1943, so a 1946 strike on steel is a spectacular anomaly. Then strike-through errors add another layer of uniqueness because they show the conditions of the minting process itself, with bits of cloth, wire, or grease embedded into the coin's surface during striking, making each one unique and unrepeatable. And off-center strikes are also highly collectible because they show the minting process failing in a very visible way, and the further off-center the more valuable it becomes. So when you add all of these categories together onto one coin, it creates a numismatic dream piece. And to think that this little penny survived decades without being lost, melted, or overlooked makes it even more special. And this is why when the coin finally came to the attention of collectors and went to auction, it sparked a frenzy, with wealthy collectors, museums, and investors battling over ownership, driving the price up and up until it settled at $65 million, making it one of the most valuable small coins ever sold. And when people ask why anyone would pay that kind of money for a penny, the answer lies in rarity, prestige, and history, because coins like this are not just money, they are artifacts, they are accidents turned into masterpieces, and they are symbols of the human fascination with uniqueness. And when ultra-wealthy collectors compete, they are not buying the metal, they are buying the story, the bragging rights, and the chance to own something no one else in the world can ever have. And as with other famous coins like the 1933 St. Gordon's Double Eagle or the 1943 bronze penny, the combination of rarity and narrative drives the value beyond imagination. And what makes this story even more powerful is that it inspires collectors everywhere to search their pocket change, to inspect old jars of coins, to check rolls of wheat pennies from the bank, because the dream of finding something like this is what keeps the hobby alive. And who knows, maybe another extraordinary 1946-era penny is still out there waiting to be discovered, hidden in plain sight among ordinary cents. And that possibility is what excites collectors more than anything: the knowledge that treasures still exist out in the world. So when we talk about the $65 million 1946 wheat penny, we are not just talking about one coin, but about the entire idea that rarity can appear anywhere, that mistakes can create beauty, and that history can live on in the smallest details. And as we explore the minting possibilities even further, experts have suggested that this coin might also show signs of being a multiple strike error, where the coin was struck more than once by the press, creating overlapping images, or that it might have been struck using misaligned dies, producing uneven impressions. And theories even go as far as suggesting it could have been a deliberate mint experiment or test piece that escaped into circulation by accident. And all of these theories add mystery, which fuels value because collectors love a good story, and the 1946 penny has all of it: history, rarity, beauty, mystery, and value beyond comprehension. And this is why today it stands as one of the greatest treasures in American coinage, worth $65 million, not because of the metal it contains, but because of the story it tells, the rarity it represents, and the dream it inspires. And it reminds us all that sometimes the smallest objects can carry the biggest secrets, and sometimes the most ordinary things can turn out to be extraordinary. And that is why the 1946 wheat penny is not just a coin but a legend, a reminder that hidden treasures still exist in the world waiting to be discovered. And that is what keeps collectors searching, hoping, and dreaming.